Meta, Block, HSBC, Atlassian, Amazon, Kate, all of these companies in the last 18 months have laid off workers and blame AI. And the media is running with it. Robots are stealing jobs. We're cooked. YouTubers are posting videos about it. Here's the thing, though. New York requires companies, whenever they lay off, to file official layoff notices, right? And researchers research over 160 of those, including Amazon and Goldman Sachs, and found no one, absolutely no one on the record citing AI. There's one more person that has something to say about this. And like we said, there's always a Sam Altman quote, because what he said, this guy that it's not a union rep, it's not a man of the people and the workers, said, the man whose entire business model depends on you believing AI is taking over, called it AI washing. Then again, maybe he changed his mind later because he also said this.
The thing about that farmer is not only would they not believe you that this thing was going to happen, they very likely would look at what you do or I do and say, like, that's not real work. It's very possible that if we could see those jobs of the future, we would be like, okay, well, you know, maybe our jobs were not as real as a farmer's job.
Let's talk about who's actually running this con.
Well, I hadn't heard about HSBC. That one's new to me, but I have heard about Block and Jack Dorsey, former founder of Twitter. So he is cutting half, or already cut half his workforce, about 4,000 people. And he said that AI is changing every job and replacing white-collar workers, maybe even him. I don't know. But there's a little bit of nuance here that we have to get into, which is that in 2019, Block had, 2,000, 2,500 employees. By 2022, they had grown to 8,000. And this is something that's happened not just at Block, but at a lot of places. During the pandemic, headcount grows, right? There's a lot of money moving through the market. People can hire. And a lot of companies showed a lot of bloat in that period of time. And then now they have to scale back for maybe automation, maybe other reasons. But it's not necessarily just, you can't peg this on one thing. You can't peg this on just AI.
So one thing, though, that you mentioned, because Jack Dorsey, he says, I think he said half of the jobs could be replaced, right?
Yeah, he said it's changing every job and it's replacing white-collar jobs.
Well, a Wharton professor that is highly respected, and I know you're a big admirer of his work, Ethan Mollick, you know, he's one of the most quoted AI researchers alive. He said it flat out. There's no clear evidence that any company could become twice as efficient simply by adopting AI. He literally said the following. He didn't use fancy words. He didn't use like any poetic terms like our friend Sam Altman would. He literally said, no one knows anything. So when an explanation is so clear, usually that's the one I tend to go with. But
yes.
One thing that caught my attention is that when Block cut off like a third, half of the workforce, the stock went up. So
yeah,
that's crazy, right? Because like some estimates right now are showing that AI-related stocks, hear this number, they drove about 75% of S&P returns in 2025. 75%, which is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, our rickety stock market being propped up on inflated AI investments, that is sort of what the situation we're in right now. These are not new tricks, right? But the stock market reacts to big news. People move their money around, you know, investors are savvy. And so if you're saying we're restructuring, it seems like your company is doing poorly and you're having to fix things internally, right? And so the stock can tend to go down. But we're seeing this dynamic now when you say AI efficiency, like what does that mean to people? You're increasing your bottom line, right? You are tech forward and innovative. You are driving change and driving revenue, right? This is like a positive. And so when people talk about AI being the reason why their layoffs are happening, the stock pops. And so I think it's just a really interesting dynamic that is happening right now. And I don't know, you think it's true?
I mean, just a week ago, the Meta stock climbed nearly 3% on a report that they were planning layoff, right? Which to me always blows my mind because of all the consequences.
Exactly.
having been laid off several times myself as someone who works on the content industry at this point. It's part of the job. It's always like they say it with such joy. We're laying off people. And it's like, well, that's going to have an impact on the community, on families, but good. Let Mark hoard more money. He's definitely, needing it all. So it's crazy to me that framing layoffs as an AI investment is sending a positive signal to Wall Street. So CEOs are like, oh, they're cutting jobs. Let me cut some jobs too, and stock goes up.
Oh, yeah.
And, everything's great. Now, some labor experts and economists, I'm getting the vibe we're doing it too, are kind of like saying that companies are scapegoating AI. Like we said, the overhiring, the interest rates, those are the real drivers, right? And there's a person that I'm not necessarily a fan of them, but he had a pretty cool expression that I want to borrow, which is Andrew Young, right? And when he was hitting some warnings about automation, he coined this term, which is the fucking. What Andrew Young was saying, it's like basically this fucking is where one high-profile AI layoff announcement kind of triggers a wave of copycats because the market, like we said, rewards this narrative. And it feels like we're a layoff season right now because if you go on LinkedIn, you can start seeing folks slowly trickling in saying, I've been made redundant, etc., which is, it's always such a sad situation.
I feel like these guys are up here like shit posting and talking about it like it's a trend, like it's funny because they all have money, and then the shit is trickling down.
And you do bring something that it's popping an idea in my head, which is Mark Zuckerberg, right? When they were announcing these layoffs, or like they're not announcing them, but they will happen. Mark my words. So he said AI tools mean that tasks that used to require big teams can be done by one person. But then simultaneously, they announced 60 to 65 billion that are going to be spent on AI infrastructure just this year, right? Not in the next 10 years, this year. So I'm like, when you count payroll, it's not really saving any money because $65 billion, it's a lot of money. Yeah. We had Harvard's Rafaela Sadun that warns that calling these AI layoffs driven is misleading to investors, but also has another consequence that we haven't even covered, right? Because we talk automation, anything, but it's like the folks that stay once everybody else gets laid off, right? Because first of all, a machine is doing your colleagues' work now. Great. That makes me really happy to do my job. So then you destroy morale, you kill innovation because folks start going on fight or flight, right? Now you're trying to just keep your job and show like you're doing things. You're not thinking about innovation, doing great things. So they're not just lying to Wall Street, right? These tech CEOs, they are gaslighting all their teams as well, society. It's a pretty fucked up thing.
Yeah, and I feel like there's going to be a big cultural backlash this year. Like, it's almost like the party's over and everybody is like looking around and seeing that the house got destroyed, right? And I feel like, inside of companies, there's already pretty negative sentiment around automation and leveraging LLMs in the workplace and just the very simplest things. I have a feeling that that's going to spike this year because of these trends we're seeing in the marketplace and in terms of people laying off half their company.
Mm-hmm. And I do have a question for you, right? Because one of the things we hear a lot, and I'm guilty of doing that. It's either like AI is going to change everything for good, or AI is useless, it's a scam, which tends to be many times my perspective, right? And I'm saying this as someone who's a heavy user, who likes to try all the tools. But I think the reality lays in the middle, right? Understood that while AI agents are not safe right now, there's many issues that we've covered through the podcast, prompt injection, etc. But the truth is, right now, AI is largely reactive, right? You prompt it, it responds. You still have to think because 30% of that is going to be bullshit. You evaluate, you're the human in the loop. You're fixing friction, right? Which is still such a human thing that AI cannot work with. But agentic AI, I gotta say, as much as I think it's BS, there's something to it, right? Like, it's still like showing advancement. We're seeing the negative effect on the internet right now, where like you have swarms of bots taking over everything. Just a couple of weeks ago, I think Digg, remember Digg from like 20 years ago?
No.
They reopened it. They had to shut down because basically the bots overrun the thing because of their SEO score. And
Yeesh.
once word came out, they literally like collapsed Dig and they shut it down. And this is just because AI bots.
Wow.
So, it's not autocomplete necessarily. It's sort of can do a lot of the jobs that kids will do, that we would do when we were entering the job market. So I do think there's something to AI agents and the impact. So what's your thesis here?
Yeah, so I think a little bit of what you're getting at is like agentic, right? Bots that take actions on your behalf are just now sort of starting to trickle into the marketplace. Only the very, very, most proficient, most tech forward companies are deploying these. And they mostly are in like San Francisco and tech hubs around the world. So these are agents that can do things on your behalf. Most people are still using LLMs as chat bots to help them write and think and process information. Once we get to a more agentic world, things are going to change, and I think they're going to change pretty rapidly. People are suddenly going to realize that they have multiple assistants, frankly, as many as they can pay for token-wise at their fingertips. And once that happens, I think work is going to start to look a bit different, right? One person can be an entire department and produce the amount of work of an entire department. One person could be a corporation. And I know that sounds like science fiction now, but I do believe that we will get to a world where that happens. Now, here's the good part about that. It means that there's this sort of like endless bound of how much value we can create as a society. The amount of value could 100x, right? We could have an economy that's like enormous. But how do we get there and people still put food on their tables? That is a real problem. And I don't think that our brightest minds are focused on that problem. I think our brightest minds are focused on getting the technology to the place where they know it can do that. So yes, I do feel like, while maybe we're in this little bit of a frothy like investment moment where people are moving their money around based on, what companies are saying about how they're hiring and firing people, the longer term picture does get a little bit darker. And I think, not to wrap this up on a dark note, but we do have to prepare for that future. We do have to put ourselves in the mindset of like the world of work could look very different in another 5-10 years.
Yeah, and I think it'll absolutely look different. Now, here's one experience that I began having with apps, which I think for me is telling of how this narrative is a gigantic yes, but, which is tokens, right? And the token economy, I said it on the last episode. If you hated paying for monthly
Yeah.
subscriptions, you're gonna love tokens, right? Because you're gonna pay a monthly subscription that it's only going to come with a certain amount of tokens you can use. Right now, AI is subsidized. Claude, ChatGPT, what we're spending using it is not covered by the $20, 5% of people are paying for those tools, right? So when you were used to prompting, and just having like a conversation with like a human, that means you got a lot of responses that wouldn't spend tokens technically, and you could just talk for hours until you got what you want. And that's how people got used to prompting. But now with tokens, each answer, it's taking money from your back, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have to know how to use that very well. And that's when this subsidized AI, it starts blowing out, and all these efficiencies of just $100 subscription a month can turn $1 million business. Well, 10 years, that's going to look exactly like taking an Uber from the east side to the west side of LA. It's now $50 versus the $6 it was 10 years ago. I'll never forget. So
Yeah, never forget. I think also, when people are looking for their next company, right, when they're in the interview process and they're talking about their package as they're signing on to their new role, it's going to be salary, it's going to be benefits, it's going to be bonus. and it's going to be tokens. And those are kind of going to be the 4 things that you're weighing as to whether you're ready to take that job or not, which is crazy to think about. That, and also like in Silicon Valley, like apparently there's, like companies that have leaderboards in terms of how many tokens each employee is using. And they're using it to kind of one up each other. Like, I'm using more tokens than you, which is
Yeah.
like a signal of things to come, right? That's a sign of the times that are coming at us pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if your company starts pushing for everyone to use AI and tracking it, mark my words, layoffs are coming, because then that means that only one person is going to be left doing the work of 10. The conclusion I can draw from this and from hearing you is that basically the slot machine, the corporate slot machine, is selling us a dramatic story about robots stealing our jobs, when the real story is much more somber and simple. It's the economy restructuring underneath everything that we hear, interest rates going up. Obviously, we're now fighting dumb words that are sinking the economy even more. So I would say, yes, jobs are in danger right now. It's not about AI. It's about shareholder value and the next quarter having to show profit. So as usual, follow the money and you'll find the real answer. Now, Kate, if this episode made you rethink about every layoff headline you've ever read, that was the point. But the story doesn't stop at AI layoffs. And what happens when companies start blaming AI and start using it to steal your work, your voice, and charge you for it? Because that's exactly what we cover on this episode about Grammarly, how they started quoting disease experts for feedback, how it didn't go well. So go and watch that one and subscribe and leave comments, because we want to talk to you and see what you think. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.